Good evening, everyone. My name is Yazdan Emrani. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Glendale. Chairperson Agressin won't be able to be here tonight. We will take a motion to elect a chairperson pro tem. However, before we do that, I'd like to read the following statement. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as boards and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, or on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when the agenda item is discussed. And with that, can we please have roll call?
Item 1A, roll call. Chairperson Agressin, Commissioner Yakubian,
Here.
Commissioner Nazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Here.
Commissioner Bonston.
Here.
Thank you.
Here.
What's next?
Item 1B, flag salute.
Since Chairperson Agressin is not here, I'll perform the flag salute as the person who's in the council. So please rise, face the flag, and repeat after me. Place your hand over your heart and repeat. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to
of the United
flag
States of America
of the United States of America
for which it stands,
and to the republic for which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation under God,
indivisible,
Indivisible.
indivisible,
and justice for
with
all.
liberty and justice for all. Okay.
So as I mentioned earlier, before we start, we will need to select a chairperson pro tem for this meeting. Mr. Leitenberg, would you like to cover that?
Absolutely. Under Glendale Municipal Code, Section 2.64.070, the members at this meeting need to select a chairperson pro tempore. So if we can get a motion and a second, and then a vote asking for somebody to lead the meeting, that would be great at this time.
I'll make a motion for Chairperson Yakubian to act as a chair for today's meeting.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I will. You know what? I respectfully, I have to decline that nomination. I myself was going to nominate Commissioner Lester.
I second that.
Well, I can try. I have a little difficulty in that I can't see anyone's face. There's something wrong with my internet, which makes it a little more confusing. And I'm also not maybe as familiar with some of the protocol of leading this commission. I'll try if someone wants to guide me, but if there's anyone here who's done it before, I'd be happy to pass that nomination to someone else.
Don't worry, we're not rating you for anything. Let's do it. You can do it. I have a massive headache unless council member
You'll be fine.
Bonston wants
Commissioner
to do it.
Lester, you'll be fine. This is a great opportunity to walk through it.
All right, I think we
We'll make
need
sure to
to
give you-
vote on the item now.
Verbal cues.
Okay, please bear in mind, I'm looking at kind of a blank screen, so I don't, okay, all right.
I will now take a roll call. Chairperson pro tem Lester,
Do I vote?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Yakubian,
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, Chairperson Pro Tempore Lester, it will be your job to ask for the next item on the agenda to appear step by step as we go.
Okay. We have covered the roll call, the flag salute. Number 2 is the posting of the agenda.
Yes, so item
And-
2. Oh.
Yes, item 2. Is that separated from the approval of minutes?
Yes, that will be. So I'll go over item 2, posting of the agenda. The agenda for the Monday, October 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by Thursday, October 21st, 2021, before 5:00 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Thank you. Should I be reading these? I'm sorry, I don't know.
No,
Should I-
no, you just ask for help and ask for next item, they'll take care of it. Yeah.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 3, approval of minutes. 3A, approval of minutes for the regular Transportation and Parking Commission meeting of August 23rd, 2021.
Okay, next item, please.
Wait 1 second. I have no comments and I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll
Oh.
second it.
Okay, the approval of minutes it's approved. Sorry.
Actually, we need a roll call, so we'll do a roll
Okay.
call first. Petra?
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Yakubian.
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian.
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So number 4 is action item A, report regarding speed limit changes on various city streets.
Go ahead and read it. Oh, thank you.
Should I go
So,
ahead?
thank you. So we have a report regarding the speed limit changes on various city streets. We'll have a short presentation by our principal traffic engineer, Mr. Pastor Casanova, and I will ask him to start the presentation.
Okay, thank you. As Mr. Imrani mentioned, my name is Pastor Casanova, and I'm the Principal Traffic Engineer in Public Works. Today, I'll be providing a presentation on speed limit changes on various city streets in Glendale. So a bit of the background. Speed limits are set in accordance with the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or California MUTCD, the California Vehicle Code, or CVC, and the California Manual on Setting Speed Limits. An engineering traffic survey is required to set and enforce legal speed limits. The ENTS, Engineering Traffic Survey, measures the prevailing vehicular speeds and establishes the speed limit at or near the 85th percentile speed. And the California Manual for Setting Speed Limits provides us the guidance on how to conduct the studies. Part of the study is to obtain radar speed survey information of at least 100 cars in each direction. And we use that information to calculate the 85th percentile speed. The California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices stipulates that the posted speed limit shall be set at the nearest 5-mile-per-hour increment of the 85th percentile speed. An example would be that if the speed survey finds an 85th percentile speed of 37 miles per hour, that number or speed limit would be rounded down to the nearest 5-mile-per-hour increment, being 35 miles per hour. In an alternate case, if the 85th percentile speed is determined to be 38 miles per hour, then that would be closer, the closest 5-mile-per-hour increment would be 40 miles per hour. However, there are 2 options that are allowed. The posted speed limit may be reduced by 5 miles per hour from the 85th percentile speed, but a justification is required. And the Engineering and Traffic Survey allows the consideration of other safety-related factors, such as vulnerable users, in that justification. In cases where the 5 mile per hour increment, in the second case, or the cases where the 5 mile per hour increment speed limit requires rounding up, then the speed limit may be rounded down without justification. However, no further reduction would be allowed. The California Vehicle Code Section 40802 provides the legal framework for setting speed limits. And Glendale speed limits are set by the code, by the California Vehicle Code and local ordinance. Staff conducts engineering and traffic surveys every 7 years or up to 10 years, and any changes in speed limits require an amendment to existing local ordinances. In Glendale, 95 roadway segments require an ENTS to set the speed limit and allow for speed enforcement. 63 of those were scheduled to lapse in 2020. As such, staff prepared 63 engineering and traffic surveys in compliance with the California Vehicle Code, the California MUTCD, as well as the Caltrans guidance. The findings included that 9 of the engineering and traffic surveys would be able to provide a lower speed limit than previous engineering traffic survey. On the screen are 5 of the 9 locations that could potentially qualify for a lower speed limit. They include segments of Broadway, Chevy Chase, as well as Concord in the city. On the screen is a vicinity map showing the remainder of the 9 locations, or the other 4, that would potentially qualify for a lower speed limit, and include Verdugo Road, Ocean View Boulevard, Montrose Avenue, and Lowell Avenue. Also included in this vicinity map are 3 other locations not mentioned previously that were locations that were inadvertently left out of the previous ordinance. So they're locations that have a posted speed limit, a speed survey was conducted, but were again inadvertently left out of prior ordinances. So this is more of a housekeeping measure to include locations 10, 11, and 12 onto a local ordinance amendment. And those locations will be on Fairmont Avenue, 2 segments, as well as McGinn Drive. On the screen is Chairperson Pro Tem Lester. Unfortunately, you can't see the spreadsheet, so I'll try to describe it, but there's a few items on it. But on the screen is a spreadsheet that shows the proposed 9 locations with proposed lower speed limits, or lowering the speed limits. And it also includes the 3 locations as housekeeping items to bring them up in the next ordinance amendment, but maintaining the existing posted speed limit.
I would just say this is on page 12 of the packet, it looks like, too, that we received, so he can follow along with the packet.
Actually, I actually can see this PDF. I just can't see your faces.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, Commissioner Bonston. So on the screen is another spreadsheet very similar to the last one, shows the 9 locations with the proposed speed limit reduction and the 3 housekeeping items, but it also shows the justifications to give you a bit of a better understanding of the process, the thought process that goes through in providing the engineering and traffic survey recommendations. So we'll take item number 1, for example, Broadway between Central and Glendale. The existing prima facie posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour. The 85th percentile speed that was conducted, the survey found an 85th percentile speed of 33 miles per hour. So normally that would be rounded to the nearest 5 miles per hour, which is 35. However, we still have that opportunity to recommend a lower speed limit under justification. So in the justification column is a little bit of an explanation of how we justify that. We took into consideration the Glendale Civic Center. There's a main Glendale post office. There's a church. There's a LA County Court, the Glendale Galleria Shopping Center. So in short, these are facilities that generate high pedestrian traffic and those vulnerable users. So the Engineering and Traffic Survey did recommend lowering that speed limit to 30 miles per hour. The fiscal impacts are not major. This one, it's essentially changing out signs and possibly posts at the location to advise motorists of the changes in speed limit. And there is a one-time cost to that change. And upon moving forward and obtaining approval of this, Public Works would be responsible for procuring the funds as well as implementing the construction items or implementing the new signage. So in summary of recommendations, staff recommends that the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission approve the motion recommending the City Council's adoption of an amendment to the Glendale Municipal Code Section 10.24.020 related to prima facie speed limits on non-local streets, including the changes below, and this shows the spreadsheet previously seen on prior slides. And with that, I can open up for questions, and I can leave it on this screen here, showing the matrix.
All right. I'd like to just request any comments on this presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. Does anyone have comments?
I have a couple of questions. I can start if I want. So I guess once we do, let's assume we change all of the speed limits in the sign. Is there a period that we don't give people ticket because they're used to the 35 mile an hour and now we change it to 30? Is there a grace period or anything? Or the next day the sign is up, someone can get a ticket on a 30 mile zone if they drive 40?
Yes, Chairperson Pro Tem Lester and members of the commission and Commissioner Nazarian, I apologize. What would happen is upon approval of council for amending the municipal code, once that municipal code change would occur, Public Works would then implement the sign changes. But as these sign changes would occur, there are signs that indicate change in traffic pattern. And we often also put orange flags on any significant changes in signage, for example, as a speed limit. So that would be incorporated to command more attention from the drivers that there's an actual change in the speed limit.
Okay, but there's actually, so we're gonna help them to see the change of the sign, but next day the sign is up, someone could get a ticket.
I'm sorry, Chairperson Azarian, can you repeat that?
We'll help everyone to see and understand the changes, but if someone goes 5 miles over what it was before, they will get ticket the following day after the signs are up, the new signs. I'm just trying to confirm that.
Yes, Commissioner Nazarian, members of the commission, that is correct, but I would defer the enforcement to Glendale Police Department and their practices for enforcement.
One other question, I have no idea how the system works, but almost all the new smart cars have the speed limits built into them. So how does the city information gets to that, and how long it takes till the car realizes that the speed limit dropped 5 miles an hour? Where do we report these changes that ultimately gets to wherever they're pulling off the Google or wherever they're pulling the Teslas of the world or all the high-end cars that pull the speed limit on their dashboard? How does that change and how long that takes?
Yes, yes, Chairperson Lester, as well as members of the commission, Commissioner Nazarian. Staff can look into that and see. Really, at the moment, I'm not sure how that data gets transferred from physically the streets to Google or connected vehicles per se. We can certainly look into that and report at a further time.
Can we bring the Excel spreadsheet one more time on all the proposed reductions? So I think pretty much everywhere we had an 85 percentile that was justifiable to go 5 miles per hour, we did it. I don't think we skipped anything. I mean, everywhere that we were within 2 miles of the posted sign, we said, okay, let's drop it another 5 miles. So we went from 37 to 30, or we went 42 to 35, or everything. So I guess my question is, now we're gonna have a 25 mile per hour, 30 mile per hour, 35, 40, probably we have 45, I'm guessing, and we probably have, so maybe some 50 or 55, I don't know, Glenwood. But it's the 30 mile per hour, that's the one I'm actually the most worried, and I'm totally against the speeding or anything, just to set the stage. But I mean, 25 miles local street, pretty much it's natural. You know it's 25. But once you get to Lowell, I would have never guessed Lowell would be 30 once we changed that, unless I paid really attention to the sign. That to me is a typical 35 mile an hour street. And trying to justify that, yeah, we can justify anything lowering this. But I'm just a little hesitant. We're doing it to the street that they don't look like 25 or 30, and they should be a little bit higher. And those are the one I'm worried about. Some of them are okay. I mean, maybe Chevy Chase is 35 down to 30, but then going Chevy Chase 30 to 25. I'm just opening this up to see how everyone else. I mean, once we start reducing this and people getting ticketed, then we got to do another study of 85 percentile and see if it was really justifiable and all those things. But just bringing this up, I see all over the board now different signs, different speed limits, and some of them that I believe they don't need to be that low. I mean, Montrose, good, okay, that's okay. Lowell, I don't see that going to 25, honestly. I mean, but just my point.
Can I ask a question? Commissioner Nazarian had mentioned Lowell. Can you just refresh my memory with the map? Is Santa Carlotta south of Foothill?
Let me pull up the map. Let's see. Right there.
Oh, it looks like it's north of.
Yes, Commissioner.
Looks like it's north of Foothill, correct?
Yes, Commissioner Yacobian and members of the commission. This is Lowell from Foothill to the north. So essentially going up the hill to Santa Carlotta. That is correct.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, this is a section that I don't believe there's a residential driveway entrance off of it. I mean, once you turn right or left in the alleys, those are all 25. I think those are given. But unless I'm missing something, I don't remember a lot of entrances off of that section into it. So again, that was just one of the few comments I had, that we're going down to 25.
Okay, are there other questions or comments?
Can I take one last look? I'm so sorry, Commissioner Boston. My comments seem to be just jumping in for a second. Can I see those few areas that had the exceptions?
Commissioner Yacobian, members of the commission, is this the slide you were referring to with the justifications?
Yeah, so this goes beyond just the basic 85th percentile rule, allowing us to make the move is this the slide or was it the one? Actually, but if you could give me just 1 minute, I just, for 1 second, I'd like to take a look at this.
Maybe while you're looking at it,
Yeah,
I'll
please go ahead.
pose a
Commissioner.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was intrigued actually to learn a little bit about the process. This idea of the 85th percentile is so interesting that it is based on kind of existing traffic and not just the existing conditions. So it sounds like, and I see all the ones that we have before us today are reduced in speed. So it's unlikely that we'll see ones that increase in speed because it would have to be a number of people speeding to show that at 85th percentile. Is that a correct assumption?
Commissioner
That's a question.
Bonston, that is correct. To get a higher speed limit or a higher 85th percentile, you would need a more quantity of vehicles traveling at a higher speed.
I guess if you don't mind me jumping in about that, when can you when was this survey done?
Commissioner Yacobian, members of the commission, I don't have that specific date when it was conducted, but it was conducted in late 2020.
In late 2020. And in just, if I may ask, and, indulge me if this is, a question that doesn't sound too intelligent, but we are in the midst of the pandemic. We have had less vehicles on the street. Is that the ideal time to be taking a accurate snapshot of vehicular, the volume and the speed and the number of vehicles going through these areas? So I want to hear comments from staff just on the timing of this. Usually it's not the best idea to be taking a snapshot of the health of anything during abnormal, anomaly situations where people are not driving on the streets as much, they're at home, all of that. So I'd like to hear your comments and thoughts on that.
Yes, Commissioner Yacobian, members of the commission, we did take that into account. Many of these speed surveys expired in the early part of 2020, as you know, when the COVID-19 pandemic originally hit. And staff was very cautious in moving forward in conducting a new engineering and traffic survey, which is why we waited until the later part of the year. We did have police department expressing their concerns because as these engineering and traffic surveys expire, we can no longer enforce the speed limits on the street. So again, we proceeded cautiously, and in the early part of 2020, we chose not to blanketly do the engineering and traffic surveys, but rather wait till the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Bonston. I have another question as well. So I guess I think overall, reducing speeds seems appropriate given that we have a number of traffic incidences in Glendale and, health and health issues related to that and accidents. So I would imagine that reducing speed can help with that. When you look at the justifications, I'm sort of curious as well why, and if you take into account traffic accidents or collisions with pedestrians as part of the justification beyond just the land use itself and the adjacent, buildings and uses.
Yes, Commissioner Bonston, members of the commission, collisions or collision history, accident history are one of the items that we take into consideration. And if we identify a high incident of collisions, then we duly note that in the justification. In looking at the screen, I don't, as I'm scanning through, I don't see that particular item identified on the 9 locations. However, in response to your question, it is an item that's considered in the engineering and traffic survey.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a couple of comments. I have a positive reaction to this. I'm happy to see that there are only lowerings included in this update. The main reason for that is just having been a part of the pedestrian advisory committee during the development of the pedestrian plan. It was really a key. It was a very heavily emphasized point that high vehicle speeds were key to Glendale's issues with collisions with pedestrians and other vulnerable road users. In fact, it's actually the first sentence in the "what we've heard" section of that report was based on community input and surveys. They pinpointed the need to address speeding vehicles as a top priority. So this is an approved plan for the city, and it looks to me like taking this step is in line with that. So that I also had a question, which is, there's some recently signed legislation that I believe is not in effect until the turn of the year. It's an assembly bill, AB 43, authored by Glendale's own Laura Friedman, who's chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee. The bill is based on, it's very highly related to this issue of setting speed limits, and could have, it appears, some pretty widespread effects for the setting of speed limits. So I guess my question is, will making these revisions at this time limit further reductions that may be possible under this pending state law? And to the extent that that's true, would that affect the fiscal responsibility of changing signs?
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester and members of the commission, staff is currently reviewing the impacts of AB 43, Assembly Bill 43, which is slated to make those changes that in the methodology that we determine speed limits. And upon reviewing those impacts, we'll be in a better position to understand how it affects our current speed limits and ordinances, and what the next steps should be.
I would add, Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, that this was an item that was requested by council last week for us to bring back a report on the impacts of AB 43. So we're looking at that right now. We'll be bringing back that report back to council shortly.
Thank you very much. So I guess the cost of changing the signs now was described as not too high, correct?
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester and members of the commission, generally, yes, the costs are mostly materials and labor.
I want to jump in real quick. I'm assuming that previous changes in speed limits on roads have resulted in maybe some signs that are in storage right now that can be used in these new changes and signage on these streets. There seems to be a kind of like a overlap that can be used. So I'm sure you guys are aware, and you'll probably be cost efficient as possible in recycling these signs to save the city some money?
Yes, Commissioner Yakubian, that is absolutely correct. Our field personnel is very cautious and careful with our signs, and we salvage as many signs as we can and use them in other locations.
I wanted to add one thing based on Commissioner Nazarian's comment. I thought was interesting. It's related to this discussion, which is just that when it comes to back to the issue of safety for our transportation network in the city, the broader issue is not necessarily speed limits as much as vehicle speeds. The issue of enforcement is always tricky because there can't be police everywhere at the same time. So he was talking about how a street seems like not a 30-mile-an-hour street, but a 35-mile-an-hour street. And so that brings up this issue of design speed. And I just wanted to mention it because it's just a key part of this discussion of speed limits. Is you can post all kinds of speed limits, but people generally are going to drive the speed that they feel safe driving at. And that generally comes from cues that they're getting from their environment. How wide is the street? How safe do they feel driving at a high rate of speed? So I just wanted to add that going forward, it would be great to look at ways to look at road design in ways that correlates with the speed limits. So when roads are up for resurfacing, etc., design issues can be set to help make the traffic feel appropriate, the speeds feel appropriate to the speed limits as posted.
I really appreciate those comments, Commissioner Lester. This is Shauna Bonston, Commissioner Bonston. I agree with you, and particularly when we've seen evidence of pedestrian or other sensitive users, collisions, and there's a real safety issue. Absolutely.
I can jump in and help our staff on this one, answering that's a great point, and it is happening. If you look around the city, every time we improve an intersection like Lexington and right above, next to the R.D. White School or just above Whole Food, those ball bouts that we come out and make the radius small, that just prevents from people speeding and everything. So city is doing every time they improve something. However, on existing road, there's not much you can do. On a new development, on cities that are underdeveloped, everyone is doing the calming measures on the design. This has been going on for a while. It's a good practice. But our city, obviously, we only can do it when we change something. And the city is doing a good job. I notice it on the street. I drive every day from my home. And as I said, several places I notice staff is doing that already. So great point, great question. Thank you. And just wanted to add that comment.
I guess it's worth also noting at this point, since we're talking about speed limits, one of the most eye-popping sort of pieces of data that was in the pedestrian plan, I'm not sure if it made it into the final version, but it was something that we saw during the development. Just basically the difference, the effect of vehicle speed on pedestrian fatalities. I just think it can't be said enough. It's orders of magnitude greater as the speed increases the risk. So the graphic was, at a speed limit of 20 miles per hour, you have a 5% chance of a pedestrian fatality. But at 30 miles an hour, it goes up to 45% chance of a fatality. And at 40 miles an hour, it's 85%. So I just think that this is the kind of thing that has to really always be mentioned when we're talking about vehicle speeds, because so many of us tend to think of it in terms of our experiences behind the wheel and not always as our experiences as a pedestrian or riding bike. Just wanted to add that.
I'd like to also add something. I know that we're mentioning, and Chairperson Pro Tem Lester was talking about the pedestrian plan, which was a very wonderful experience to be a part of. I know he and I both attest, eye-opening experience. But another thing to always keep in mind from my perspective is with all of these changes that get made, let us not ignore the fact that our police department is, in my opinion, the backbone to a lot of the necessary changes, positive changes that need to occur. So I always believe that giving them the support that they need as they go out into the public and help with educating, enforcing, and trying to create a safe environment for everyone. So besides the engineering factors, I always like to bring in the human aspect of the people who are out there on the front lines trying to help keep our streets very safe. So that's always something I'd like to bring out.
Thank you. Does anybody else have comments on this item?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure what the next point of order is. We have alternatives.
We need a
To-
motion, Chairperson Pro Tem, to recommend to the City Council the adoption of the ordinance. So if somebody wants to make a
Okay.
motion and second it.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and with
Okay.
a roll call,
Yes.
actually.
A roll call.
Mhm.
Yeah, 1 second.
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Yakubian.
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian.
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we have the next item, please?
Item 4B, report recommending against installation of speed humps on School Street between Olmsted Drive and Glenwood Road.
Good evening again, Chairperson Pro Tem Lester and members of Commission. We have this report that Mr. Pastor Casanova, Principal Traffic Engineer, is also going to do a short presentation for you on.
Thank you. Chairperson Pro Tem Lester and members of the Commission, Pastor Casanova, Principal Traffic Engineer, Department of Public Works again. I'll be giving now a presentation on traffic calming measures on School Street. On the screen, you'll see a vicinity map showing the segment of School Street, which is located between Olmsted Drive and Glenwood Road, immediately adjacent to Herbert Hoover High School. Going over a bit of the background, we received a request for speed humps or traffic calming on School Street from a resident to address concerns regarding vehicle speeding on School Street. Staff conducted a screening evaluation and an engineering study based on the criteria stipulated in the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program, and School Street did not meet the required criteria stipulated in the NTCP. Accordingly, staff does not recommend the installation of speed humps on School Street. However, the requester wishes to appeal to the Transportation and Parking Commission to consider reversal of staff's decision and authorize installation of speed humps on School Street. This is a closer up view of School Street outlined in a blue rectangular box that shows School Street existing between Olmsted Drive and Glenwood Road. And you'll see in green, it indicates that it is not a residential street. On the west side of School Street is Herbert Hoover High School, and on the east side, there's an actual chain link fence that separates School Street from abutting residential properties. And we'll see on subsequent slides that Spencer Street appears to tee off into School Street. However, it is closed at that location and has no access for vehicles or pedestrians to School Street. On the screen is a satellite image of School Street, again, between Olmsted and Glenwood Road. And this is now a street view of School Street looking to the north or northbound. School Street is a one-way street going southbound, has parking on both sides of the street, is approximately 30 feet wide. And as you can see on the screen, on the left or west side, there's the back part of a gate, which is the easterly end of Herbert Hoover High School. And on the east side or right side of the image, you can see a chain link fence behind the parked vehicles that separates School Street from any abutting properties. This is now a southbound view, or looking south on School Street. So now Herbert Hoover High School is on the right, and the chain link fence separating the abutting properties is on the left. This is a different angle now, looking to the east and showing how Spencer Street terminates at School Street, and there's no physical connection. It's closed off and does not connect to School Street. Going over some of the characteristics from the images we just viewed is that School Street is 30 feet wide. Herbert Hoover High School is on the west side of School Street, and School Street is bounded by a chain link fence on the east side. School Street is a one-way street in the southbound direction. There are no fronting residential dwellings or business structures, and there are no pedestrian sidewalks on either side. School Street has no parking from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. signs on most of School Street, with the exception of a short portion on the south end of School Street that serves overflow parking for the community. And lastly, Spencer Street terminates at School Street without any vehicle or pedestrian access. An engineering analysis was conducted following the neighborhood traffic calming procedures, which included the first stage being a screening evaluation that takes a close look at the street classification, as well as whether or not the street is within a residential district. In terms of the street classification, staff identified the street type to be a local street. So School Street is a local street. And in terms of the residential district, School Street is not located in a residential district as defined in the California Vehicle Code. That is, there are no residential properties fronting upon or having direct access to School Street. As such, this section of School Street does not meet the screening criteria of the neighborhood traffic calming program. And normally no further traffic calming steps are required at this point. However, the resident continued to express concerns regarding speeding on School Street. As such, staff conducted an engineering analysis, and despite not meeting the screening evaluation, an engineering study was conducted to take a closer look and understand baseline speed conditions on School Street. The study included a review of 24-hour speed and volume traffic counts for 3 separate days, field investigation by engineering staff to confirm the roadway characteristics, including street width, signs, striping, and roadway geometry. This information, or these findings, were compared with the neighborhood traffic calming program criteria that would normally be applied, and the findings found that the combined speed and volume criteria were below the minimum neighborhood traffic calming program thresholds. As such, the School Street did not meet the neighborhood traffic calming criteria for installation of speed humps. On this spreadsheet, we'll go over the 24-hour speed and volume criteria as shown in the neighborhood traffic calming program. In the first row, where you see typical street segment, it identifies the volume criteria being a minimum of 1,000 vehicles that go through a roadway in a 24-hour period. And that speed criteria, is the 30-mile-per-hour speed criteria, uses the 85th percentile speed under a typical street segment. With School Street, it is adjacent to a school, and the neighborhood traffic calming program has a special criteria for school zones. So the volume criteria there reduces to 500 vehicles for a 24-hour period, and the 30-mile-per-hour minimum threshold uses the 90th percentile speed, which it captures a higher amount of vehicles and will normally make it reduce that requirement per se. And that shows the criteria that we used in this comparison. So on this spreadsheet, we see the 3 data points, or the 3 days that we conducted a speed and traffic volume counts. And on the first day, held in April, we'll see 417 vehicles, which is below the minimum of 500, and the 90th percentile speed of 30, which met that threshold. However, the volumes were lower. In May, another traffic count was conducted, and the traffic volumes went up to 660, and the 90th percentile speed went down to 29. And then another data point in August showed the traffic volumes increasing to 800, and the 90th percentile speed decreasing. So something noteworthy as we look at the 3 and the differences, in early April of this year, GUSD had not resumed completely to their hybrid program, and which may result in the lower traffic volumes. In May, GUSD had begun implementing the hybrid program for students, and we can see that the traffic volumes went up and speeds went down. And in August, where they resumed a more comprehensive hybrid program, more students meant more traffic volumes. And the trend that we're seeing is that the higher traffic volume, or the more back to normal we get, the lower the speed, the 90th percentile speeds get on School Street. So in summary, for the findings and recommendations, School Street does not meet the criteria stipulated in the neighborhood traffic calming program. The School Street is not located in a residential district, and it does not meet the combined speed and volume criteria within the 24-hour period. In order to balance mobility, emergency response, traffic calming, staff typically recommends installation of speed humps only when the aforementioned criteria is satisfied. Accordingly, staff does not recommend the installation of speed humps on School Street. Alternative traffic calming measures that could be implemented as an alternate to speed humps. Staff reviewed the potential of installing painted edge lines, these are 4-inch white edge lines that are painted longitudinally on the roadway parallel to the parked vehicles, which provide a visual narrowing of the roadway to encourage slower speeds. Staff also can recommend 25-mile-per-hour school zone speed limit signs to be implemented, complemented by temporary speed radar feedback signs that display a driver's speed up to a preset maximum and make the drivers aware that they may be traveling above that speed limit. And we can complement that, of course, with the school zone pavement markings. This exhibit shows a conceptual exhibit of what that would look like if we look at the right side of the screen with a proposed school zone sign and pavement markings. And as we move towards the left or middle of the screen is the proposed school zone speed limit sign and speed radar feedback sign and on the pole, and complemented by the school zone marking. And you also see 2 white longitudinal lines going horizontally that would be the 4-inch wide edge lines to create that narrower look of the roadway. In summary, for the request for the appeal, the requester wishes to appeal to the Transportation and Parking Commission to consider reversal of staff's decision and authorize installation of speed humps on School Street. Based on the neighborhood traffic calming program and data presented in tonight's presentation, staff recommends not approving the appeal for speed humps on School Street. And that concludes the presentations, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thanks for the presentation. I have some questions and comments, but I'd like to invite the other commissioners to go ahead first, if you'd like.
I'd like to jump in and ask staff, can I get some information? If this is not a residential street, who exactly filed the application for a speed hump? I mean, I don't need specific name, but I'm just saying, where did they come from? Where are they living?
Yes, Commissioner Jacobian, Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, members of the commission, the request came in from one of the abutting property owners. So although there are no properties that front School Street, there are residential units that are directly on the opposite side of the chain link fence. That would be the side of their property. If you look at the entire block, there are 4 single-family dwellings along that stretch whose side of the house abuts the School Street, and one part of one apartment building on the south end.
Is there, I mean, I know there's a chain link fence, but is there access for people who are abutting that chain link to be using that street? Number one. Number two, is there access to the school? I know there's that entrance on, I guess, the eastern side of the school. Is that gate usable? I mean, is there pedestrian? I know there's no sidewalks, but is there pedestrian flow there?
Commissioner Jacobian, Chairman Pro Tem Lester, members of the commission, the answer is no to the access to the east side or the residential properties on the chain link fence. There's no access for pedestrians or vehicles to cross from School Street, State to Spencer or any of the homes. On the west side, which is the school side, the school does use the gate, so there can be pedestrian activity leading to and from the vehicles parked on School Street.
And I guess just real quick to go back to my first question of figuring out what the purpose was behind this. So if they're not really using that street for their own parking, or they're not really interacting with that street, these homeowners, is this an issue of noise for them? Because if it is, then they're going to realize that having the humps there on the street may actually cause more noise for them as the cars have to slow and go over these humps. So again, I'd like to know this is not just for this specific situation, Pastor, but also to, as we've dealt with so many of these requests over the years, I like to understand where people are coming from and what their reasoning is. Do you have any more insight as to what the reasoning is?
Commissioner Jacobian, Chairman Pro Tem Lester, members of the commission, that is correct. You mentioned noise, and the residents' concern. One of the concerns that they mentioned was noise, that they can hear vehicles, at all hours of the day and night. That speed on School Street. That was one of the concerns that they mentioned. One of the items we typically mention, staff mentions to residents, is that noise from the speed humps or vehicles hitting the speed hump is something that is prominent and comes out from installation of speed humps. But going back to their original concerns and main concerns are that they can hear vehicles speeding on School Street.
And I guess my final comment would be, based on the previous discussion agenda item we had, I find this to be a beautiful case of why not? If we're so in belief that lowering the speed limit can affect traffic speed, and therefore thus making city streets safer. This would be one of those good. And I saw your list of alternative calming measures, and every single one of those were the ones I was hoping that you would be putting there. So I like what I saw from that.
Yes, Commissioner Jacobian and Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, members of the commission. One thing to note there is on the neighborhood traffic calming program, it stipulates thresholds or criteria, meaning minimums. And whereas in the speed limit presentation that we reviewed previously, in following the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices and the Caltrans guidance, there is that flexibility of when you round up, and it gives you an option of rounding down with justification. So that language and options are written into those codes and procedures, whereas in the neighborhood traffic calming program, they're basically thresholds and minimum thresholds and criteria.
But we do have, but this is a school zone. So we're within our, the legal guidelines to make this a 25-mile-an-hour zone.
We'll have to look at the legality of that. Again, the California Vehicle Code has prima facie speeds for residential zones. And in this case, School Street is not in a residential zone. So staff can look into the feasibility of conducting a traffic survey, engineering a traffic survey for this stretch to identify that speed limit.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Commissioner Boston. I have a number of questions and comments. I mean, I guess this is really reminding me of the previous conversation as well, when we talked about traffic calming measures that were not just, signs, but I can't help but question, or I guess it seems obvious to me that there might be a speeding issue here, given that it's a one-way street, and also the lack of access from the perpendicular streets and pedestrians. So I think those are features that contribute to increased traffic. And so I guess I do wonder why there is not access. That seems problematic to me. It may have to do with the school. There may be a history with that. I'm also wondering why it wouldn't be automatic that we would have 25-mile-per-hour signs and the other measures, the alternative measures that you listed near schools. I would think that would be automatic, and I was curious about that. And then I also was a little confused on the residential district definition. One of the charts showed that there was a school park zone. So how can it be both a school park zone with its own criteria and yet not considered a residential district? That was curious to me. And I can re-explain that if I didn't articulate that well. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Bonston, Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, and members of the commission. So I'll take it one at a time. So one of the questions I got from that was that why school and park zones? How can they be connected but yet not connected? So the neighborhood traffic calming program guidelines, what it does is it has a reduced criteria for those two cases when a street abuts a school or a park. So it's not, both, but rather it allows a street to use more relaxed conditions than a typical street that is not adjacent to a school or park. And hopefully that answers your question.
And maybe it doesn't meet the definition of a residential zone because it's not fronting it or accessing the street, the residence.
That is correct. The residential zone is actually defined legally in the California Vehicle Code. And it stipulates that there has to be with 13 fronting dwelling units on one side of the street or 16 on both within a quarter-mile segment. And School Street is a bit of an anomaly because it only exists in that little portion. There is no northern half or southern half that's segmented. It only exists there. And again, there are no homes that front directly onto School Street, and there are only 4 homes that abut on the side of their property and 1 multifamily dwelling.
And I guess a part of that question I had then was, how did it come to be that the streets are cut off and the pedestrian access is even cut off to School Street?
Yes, Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
members of the commission, that probably goes back quite a bit in history. I don't have that, or we don't have that information immediately available. We could research that and find out. The proximity of the school and seeing Spencer Street and the potentials for cut-through traffic and traffic circulation, it may have been connected to the school.
Okay, I'll make a comment, and I may have some questions. First, I need to say this is very near to where I live, a few hundred yards. I think as someone who both drives and walks and bikes on that street, I know some things about the context. In particular, you know, it's used as a sort of an auxiliary parking lot by the students when school's in session. And at night, it is used as a meetup, hangout place, as an actual destination. The cars come from all over, they drive down School Street, and they don't go through, they stop and they hang out there. Mostly young men, mostly fast cars. The analysis, I was curious when I saw it, and I asked a friend who has a high school kid at Hoover right now. My kids are too young. And yeah, apparently, so the school in April was at 10% capacity. And then, so then in May, it's hard not to be curious what that number represents when many high school students kind of didn't really go back to school last year. So yeah, I'm a little bit like uncertain of how to look at this just in the COVID context in general. I do know what we perceive as neighbors to this location, which is a lot of really fast driving. Olmsted, which is the street to the north, has speed bumps because of heavy use by all kinds of traffic, with students heavily represented. And so a lot of frustrated drivers are going over the speed bumps and then they wing a turn onto School Street to go south, almost on 2 wheels, and you can hear the engines roaring. I have walked down and biked down and seen cars going fast, but of course I can't say for sure how fast. I guess the main thing is Commissioner Bonstein's point really resonated with me. Like, it seems a bit to be splitting hairs regarding what kind of a place this is. It's clearly a school zone, and there are clearly pedestrians walking on a 30-foot wide street that's parked on both sides often, with no sidewalk. There's a baseball field adjacent, and the stairs that walk up the steps to the field are on School Street. That street is used for parking for people to walk up to the field there. So pedestrians there's a lot of pedestrian activity on that street. I do know that some parents drop off their kids on the corner of Olmsted and School, and to walk down. So that is a thing too. People not even parking on the street, but walking down from Olmsted. anyway, I'd say that in general, I feel pretty sympathetic to people who are concerned about speeding here. I'd like to hear other comments from the other commissioners if there are any.
Yes, I'll say a comment. So hearing the staff recommendation and running through all the criteria twice, having those great suggestions, I'm ready to make a motion of going with the staff suggestion of those alternative criteria. The only caveat is I think probably just seeing this person, the way I guess he came back to bring back this subject after city staff denial, he or she may go even to all the way to council and bring this up again. So to save that from the city and council members and everything, maybe the staff needs to tell them what we're planning to do, and if he or she agrees, I'm 100% in favor of doing those calming measures, the stop sign, radar, and striping of the street, and doing all those measures. So I think there are reasons we have criteria, and I just don't see going against staff recommendation on this one. So I'm in favor of alternative solution.
Okay, well, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I guess, well then, would someone like to make a motion? Oh, you already did. So
Well,
I guess,
I semi did it. Let me make it official. So I make a motion to approve staff recommendation for alternative measure of speed calming devices, including the radar, striping, and I believe what was the first thing we had on the north side of the street? Basically the alternative solution. I'm making a motion to approve that.
I'm sorry, let me
may I?
please make a clarification. The motion here, as this is a public hearing, needs to be either to approve or disapprove the application. So I believe that the motion you're trying to make is to agree with staff and disapprove the application.
Correct, and then I guess I have to make another motion for the alternative solution. Is that I can do that?
No, the alternative.
Commissioner, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say the alternative solutions are only by recommendation. We wouldn't need a motion for those.
Would it be possible for me to make an additional comment on this before any motion is made? I wanted to check with any of the other commissioners. Is there any support for further study on this issue, considering the points made about COVID, school not necessarily being operating in a normal method? Was there any other support among commission for that?
This is Commissioner Bonston. The only pause I would have with that is that even if we went back and did additional studies, if it doesn't meet the definition of a residential area, the correct term, I still think that's kind of problematic. And so I do think that the recommendations for the alternatives seem reasonable. I still am struck by what feels to me like a cautionary tale of what happens when you block off a street too much, which I think this is sort of symptomatic of we were solving for something decades ago. And I can see from the pictures, it looks a little bit like no man's land, right? So I can see why that would then be a destination for younger drivers and a place that ends up being kind of loud and fast. But to answer your question, I'm not sure that solves, I don't know what the solution then is if we do additional studies.
Can I ask a real quick question? If I missed it, please correct me. Was there any mention of the requirement of signatures garnered for this speed bump to be brought forward?
Commissioner Jacobian, members of the commission, that was not mentioned because we did not get to that step. That step normally comes up if the criterion are met, and then we move on to the next step of one, evaluating hydrology, which is drainage on the street. And as long as there are no issues, then we move forward to the petition stage.
They don't need to when they're bringing forth an initial application for speed humps, they don't need to bring forth a signatures of, for example, on the street, a certain percentage. They don't have to bring that straight up. That's on the second step of the process.
Commissioner Yokobi and members of the commission, that is correct. That does not happen till on later steps.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to get through, even if it was, it had met the initial, but I mean, again, that's the further studies. I'm all for supporting staff's the motion on this. So if you guys are good with it, let's move forward.
I'm completely sure. I apologize. I'm on the fence. Let me ask a quick, were any other comments received by staff besides the applicant regarding this?
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, members of the commission, no, mainly the request that came in was from one resident in one of the abutting properties to School Street.
I did receive an email from the parent of a Hoover student, and I don't know if that's admissible for me to read or if I should just characterize the comments. If that's not something that's appropriate, let me know.
No, that would be fine.
I can read it?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Mary Chartkoff. My son Ivan goes to Hoover High School and walks down School Street every day after I drop him off. I have worried about him getting hit as he's walked down the street since there are no sidewalks and many of the cars drive way too fast. With 3 schools in the area, it helps to have some of the students dropped off on Olmsted to walk down to the entrance. There are many students that use School Street for walking. Speed bumps are a logical solution to making a safer environment for students and the neighborhood as a whole. Yeah, that's the comment.
If you're dropping off your kid on that street, there's no crossing. You're just right on the right side. He walks to the school. So I don't get the letter.
I mean, I can't say for sure, but my guess is that because this is a 30-foot wide street and you have it parked on both sides, you are obliged to walk near to moving traffic with no alternative except to maybe walk in the bushes or up on top of right on top of the curb, you know? I just wanted to enter that. So I guess if there's no other comments, I guess Commissioner Nazarian can go ahead with your motion.
I can make a motion to approve city recommendation to not approve the request for speed hump, basically.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, roll call. Chairperson Pro Tem Lester,
No.
Commissioner Yakubian,
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Next item, please.
Item 5, oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. We have no callers at this time.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 6, commission staff comments updates.
Mr. Imrani.
Chairperson Pro Tem Lester, staff doesn't have any comments at this point.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 7, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
You
you.
guys.